Welcome back to the podcast. It's early April, so it's definitely getting to steelhead season. I've fished late March and had some success some years. Kind of depends on the weather. If we have a late snow, get some rain to bring up the water. And there have been a couple of times where it's been like mid to late April where things really start to happen because, again, it's low water, it gets dry, it gets kind of warm, but not enough to really melt stuff. So you don't have that like spring runoff, warmer water, fish come up. So yeah, it really depends. It really varies from year to year. But we had fun 2 weekends ago. Got some nice trout.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Stayed at a Forest Service cabin, which was nice, and water was pretty low, so we weren't expecting many steelhead. Saw maybe a couple smaller ones, but
yeah. Actually, speaking of that weekend, I maybe should clear this story first, but you might have to edit this out. But so I went down to a wedding in Phoenix. You know, a bunch of friends that I hadn't seen, and we all say hi, and then immediately my friend is like, "So I saw a picture of you with a steelhead," and it was because like Jeff had sent this picture to her dad, who lives on Prince of Wales Island, of this massive trout that I caught last weekend. And I was like, "Oh no, Tanya, it was a trout. It wasn't a steelhead." And she looked at me and she was like, "My dad sent me a picture of the trout you caught." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." And she's like, "I don't think we're talking about the same thing." And she pulled up this message that her dad had forwarded her from Jeff that was a picture of me with this big fish. And it was like, the caption was like, "Pregnant wife with her trout," or whatever. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm pregnant. I was going to tell you in person."
Yeah, it's funny I don't really know how to bring it up. Like if there's a lull in the conversation, don't want it to be, "Oh, by the way, everyone." So I just kind of have threaded it into conversations, or people around here telling them in person, but like text message people can't, get to, called some people, but sometimes like with Troy and Dawn, it was just, "Oh, this is a perfect time to do it." I think I did say, "Yeah, pregnant wife also caught this," or landed it herself or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I prefer to tell people in person. Like it feels, I don't know.
Yeah. I guess if anybody's finding out right now via podcast, you don't feel like you're low on the power rankings. You didn't get in person. You didn't get a call. You didn't get a text. You're finding out about it. But I don't know. How do you do these sort of things? Like, I guess you could do it on social media, but.
Yeah, this might be our post and also a test of who listens to this podcast.
That's true. That's true. That's true. But yeah, it's been fun, and it's going to be an interesting year. It's mid-September, so right in the middle of actually after the alpine deer season. I was going to say right in the middle of caribou season, but we didn't draw a tag, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Nor do we have a moose one, so it doesn't really matter either. But
yeah.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun to head out there. Weather was nice, warm, chilly at night, but and the water was low, but not real low.
It was pretty low, right?
Yeah, I've seen it, I think, maybe lower once or twice, but that was when I was kind of out there in that winter.
Yeah, when everything's still frozen.
But yeah, we used a variety of different like heavier flies. There are a couple of really deep slots, and so you got to get down as fast as possible. So floating line, but really heavy flies. Used an indicator in a couple spots because there's a couple deep chutes that you really got to like suspend the fly in the right area. As soon as it starts to come out and swing a little bit, then you're in trouble. So it's really hard to kind of figure out. You got to bring everything. Bring a sink tip, variable rates of sink tip, some really light flies, small flies that can go in the clear water with the sink tip, or go with heavy, like the liquid wrench. Those are some awesome flies. You can put that under an indicator, or a smaller fly under an indicator, or, you really got to have everything out there, because on the same river you can have deep chutes where it's 5-6 feet deep. You have some deep pools. You also have some kind of traditional walking speed, stereotypical looking steelhead swinging water. So it's kind of nice to have we used switch rods the last time we were out, 7-weight and an 8-weight switch rod. So yeah, not really much room for spays.
Yeah.
The river's a lot smaller. You're talking about, 20-mile rivers at the absolute most. A lot of them are a lot smaller, so it's your flows are more like 1,000 CFS, something like that. Nothing real big, and then they drain out pretty quick. So rising water is typically really good.
Yeah.
To get them up there and then fish the lower or the falling water.
Yeah, I'm always kind of like, I know that the rivers are like this, but it's mind blowing to me that like there's so much variation in depth. And so I can go from like the 6 inches of water that I'm standing in to like 6 feet. And I'm just always so paranoid that I'm going to get snagged. So I never fish deep enough.
Yeah. The wading thing too can be a little bit weird when you get those spots. Obviously some of the areas it's really easy to see that there is bottom, but the difference even between like your knee deep and it looks like it's pretty consistent, but you wade a little bit further and all of a sudden you're at waist. You're like, okay, it's going to come up a little bit, but it just keeps getting deeper. So at least you can kind of see the bottom. Whereas when we're doing that on the Kenai, when it's silty, like it starts to go and you start to freak out a little bit and that sand just starts to like crumble beneath you. So being able to at least see the bottom is pretty nice. And you can kind of get a gauge of how deep you need to be fishing. But yeah, it's nice to see it when it is low water. You get a better idea of like where you're standing, where the deep parts are, where the holding water is going to be. But just knowing the water and fishing a lot really helps out.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
There was a nice little spot underneath a tree that I've caught a couple steelhead before that we were getting some trout. You had a lot of fun at that little area. What fly were you using there? I don't know if you know the name of it, but it was just like a...
Yeah, just kind of like a little egg-sucking leech type guy, like an orange hothead. Yeah, I kind of switched to that out of desperation because we were fishing a lot of pink. And I was catching just like little trout. And I was like, well, let's see, switch it up.
It's like just on a scud hook, a little egg sack looking thing. There was some kind of yarn on it, little yarn fly there, pretty small.
Pink ones.
But that bead-headed, it had a little bit of flash in it, right? Was there some little flash?
Yeah, a little flash. I don't know. I tied it. It's like basically a woolly bugger with a hothead. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that thing caught quite a few nice trout, and then my last fish was a monster trout, probably the biggest rainbow trout I've ever caught on a fly rod. Yeah,
that was a monster, and that was wasn't even a big one. The fly was probably like a 8 or a 10 or something like that. Definitely was not a huge fly. It was a nice little compact trout fly, and like a stereotypical egg sucking leech looking thing. But I definitely like the bead heads more than I like gold heads.
Oh yeah.
Or the yarn heads. The egg sucking leech that you learn how to fly or learn how to tie, like your second fly that you ever learn with just with the yarn, I much prefer the bead heads.
Yeah, definitely. There's something about them. I really do think they're more effective.
Yeah, agreed. And then it's, of course, like you fish it better too sometimes. Like you feel more confident. Like there are times I'll tie on a fly and I just have no confidence in it. And I probably don't have confidence in it because I don't fish it a whole lot, so I don't catch as many fish. But is that because it's not a good fly? Because I'm not fishing it well? Like, what is it? That's kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy. I did a little poll on Instagram about what color people like for their steelhead flies. And, of course, you have variations. And one guy I know who really keeps... Oh, I don't have any more. It's all gone. Oh, my questions are gone. Where are my stats? That's too bad. But a guy I know who keeps his information really, really close to his chest. He doesn't tell me pretty much anything about where he goes. I just know he catches some big fish. And he said that he likes black for his steelhead color, which made me think, oh, that's why he's so successful. At the same time, he's totally the type of person who would say black, but really mean pink, just to kind of mix things up. And he didn't even put down what type of fly rod he uses, because I think he might use a 6-weight single-handed rod. But people are funny about that stuff. It's hard to trust people who are steelheaders. They'll just throw all kinds of stuff out there.
Well, the black worked great for the rainbow trout.
Yeah.
So steelhead, not that different.
No. And I think some of the rivers he fishes too, and a lot of people do fish. You have some pink in your fly box, you have some purple, and then you have some black. I just haven't happened to use a whole lot of it. I think some of the flies that I've used aren't like the right. some of them were a little bit too big. So I think that's one of the issues. And again, when I have fished it, the watercolors matched it and it's been good, but it just hasn't been successful. And so that has made me stick more to pink, orangish, and then like a purple. Purple is about as dark as I get. But yeah, again, it's just kind of what you're comfortable with. As far as the 6-weight rod, which I think he fishes with, I've caught steelhead with my 6-weight, but I just like the extra backbone of a 7-weight.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know, like, I was actually talking with some people at work the other day, and they were like, well, people who fly fish for steelhead, like, you tire them out more, and it's bad for the fish. It's better to catch them on spin rods. And I was like, I mean, yeah, if you're fishing for a steelhead on, like, a really light rod and being crazy, like, I could see that argument, but yeah, I was kind of like, I feel like it's more about the angler and your attitude towards trying to keep the fish in a healthy and release it quickly and, make sure that you're not doing that. But
yeah. Well, I think a lot of people fish.
That was to say that is my justification for using a heavier rod.
Well, the people use ultralight spinning rods too. So it's,
yeah.
I mean, you have a fighting butt, but the fact that you have a fighting butt doesn't really make much of a difference. So whether it's an ultralight spinning rod or a, 6-weight fly rod, it's probably pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And then if that's why, like, the 7 or the 8, like, you have a little bit more spine in it, and then your tippet is ultimately one of the most important things. If you're fishing with like a 4X or something like that, then it's going to be a lot more delicate. But we typically go with like a 1X or a 0X or just straight up 12, 15 pound, not even tapered, because you're just going to chuck it out there anyway. It doesn't really matter if you're not presenting it super well. Like, there's going to be, it's not going to roll out super nice, but if you don't have tapered leader and you just happen to have some straight mono, then go with it. But
so if
you don't have to, if you can just bring them in, then it's fine.
Yeah.
What were you say about your cast?
Oh, I was going to say they never roll out nice, so it's irrelevant.
No. Well, I think too, with the switch rod, it is kind of an in-betweener. Yeah. And we fish the floating switch line. So it works, but it's not pretty. Like a spay cast just looks really pretty, very involved, and got to do it. And then these rivers are smaller. When we were fishing on the Kenai a couple of years ago, you get that nice long swing, and then you could, put together some nice cast, had a ton of room in the back, and, you're not getting the same nice D loop that you would with a spay, but, we threw out some nice casts up there with the 2-hander, but it's not really. The lack of space is pretty much the limiting factor. But it does make it fun when you kind of walking through the woods and you can look down and you can see some of these spots in the clear water and look for the holding spots and just check and see. And there are a couple of spots in the river where you can check. And then if you happen to see something, think, okay, well, on our way back down, let's fish this from the top, because it might be onto us. Who knows how, if they end up like seeing people, and if they're turned off or anything like that, I don't know. It's probably good to have that stalker's type of attitude. But,
well, I feel like those ones that are in locations where you can kind of see them, like, I don't know if I've ever caught one of those. I think they're just like, when they're in that shallower water, they're just a little bit more suspicious, I think of.
Yeah, I think that calm stuff too is as soon as you enter the water, there's going to be some disruption. It's not moving super fast, and there's some undulations in it, and so the closer you get, and even the more you splash, if you're splashing right on top of them in that water that's calm, it's a little slower than maybe it should be. It's a good holding spot once they enter the river, but it seems like a lot of things are kind of working against you, and then kind of hard to tell exactly where they're at, and they can see everything else. So I don't know. Again, it could just be I don't feel really good about it because I'm more nervous and I may be giving them too much credit. Who knows? But I've seen some fish move to flies in that area, and I've seen them, just ignore, refuse, and then for some reason, a cast that felt the exact same as every other cast, they just hit and just, well, what was it about that one? Did I cast a little bit different than I thought I did? Did I finally just break it down? Was there like a little exchange in there? So, one fell back and the other one kind of filled in, and that happened to be the one. Who knows? But that's steelhead fishing.
Yeah. Is there any kind of like dominance hierarchy with steelhead?
Like which one out of the group? If there's 10
yeah, like
of
if the
them that are
dominant
holding,
one like fell back, then the other ones would be like, oh, open season.
Oh, I don't know. I think that if you have a bunch of fish that are pushing up the river, they start to pair off at some point. So if one is next to a hen, I don't know if it would peel off or why it would, or because sometimes you'll see the dollies or the rainbows will be moving up with them and kind of agitating them or kind of just moving with them, just kind of being around. Sometimes we picked up some trout when we've been fishing for steelhead. So I wonder if a trout irritates one and it moves off, how soon a different one would take its place. Or when they are in that group, like who gets to be in the good holding water. I don't know. Be curious too, like once you get the winter group that moves up and they hang out in the lake over the winter and wait for the fresh ones to move in. Wonder just what that lake program is.
Yeah.
I mean, they're cruising, or are they just kind of holding and they do like a somewhat dormant, or like what?
And then like what triggers them to spawn and get out of there?
Mm-hmm. And the ones that come up in the spring, some of those will only be in the system for a matter of days.
Yeah, they're quick.
Just come up with the water, and some of those rivers that are really close to the ocean that aren't very long, that just look like irrigation ditches. They just look like small little runoff things that would go to nothing, that have really good genetics, and you wouldn't even think that there'd be steelhead there. But water comes up, steelhead come up, make it happen, and get out of there. It's pretty wild. But yeah, those rivers drain out so quick that the timing is so important. And you want to break in the weather because you just stop being cold, being wet. But that the dropping water in some rain is kind of what you expect.
I like the dropping water. Like it's been raining, sun comes out, water's dropping.
Yeah, that's ideal, but it seems like it never happens like that. It's always like it rains a ton on a Tuesday. By the time we can get out to the water, it's already dropped. So sometimes you need that water to be, or at least keeping it up.
But we'll catch a couple steelhead.
Yeah. When it's raining and kind of keeping the water steady, so it's not comes up from like flood stage, dropping fast, but like still pretty high and you're still moving and it's sustaining that. That's kind of what people look for as soon as like the second day of the storm or the day after the storm, is just plan around that huge rain here in the spring. But yeah, we just kind of go with the weekends and whatever we can do.
Yeah.
I think I'd know a lot more if I could just take off any time that I thought it was going to be good. I'd have better insight, but I'm just so dependent upon the weekend, and I don't really take notes. It just kind of aim for those high water days or coming down off the high water when it's a little bit warmer.
Yeah, and I kind of thought this year was going to be an early year because it was so warm starting in like February. Mm-hmm. We didn't have as much snow, but so I was pretty hopeful when we went 2 weekends ago that like, hey, maybe there's some fish that have pushed up. Yeah,
I kind of thought that because we got the 15 inches of snow or something like that in those two storms. Mm-hmm. But then when it got warm, I thought, oh, it's going to warm up, it's going to rain, and there's just going to be a ton of water, and the fish are just going to move up. It's going to be an early year like it was a few years ago when there was full-on leaves on the salmonberry bushes, like in the background of a picture that was taken like the 1st or 2nd of April, maybe even been like the 30th of March. Yeah. But it warmed up and just exploded with spring. But this year, kind of got sunny, but didn't get super warm. Rained off most of the snow, but then it didn't get warm. And like we're still just seeing the buds on the trees and on the bushes starting to happen. Yeah. But it's been, 3 weeks since 4 weeks since we got totally rid of the snow, but it just hasn't been warm.
Yeah, yeah, it seemed like it was warm. There was like a week there when it was pretty warm, but I guess yeah, it just wasn't enough warm and water at the same time to
Yeah.
or yeah, the fish just do what they want. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be a little upset if I was coming up here. Some of the rivers obviously they have huge runs, and you can time it pretty good. You're going to be fighting a whole bunch of people. But yeah, I don't think you can really go too wrong in April and May because it's not going to be delayed like into June or anything like that. It's not going to be so far off. It's going to be pretty close. But just that if things cooperate, and you can have 2 or 3 really, really good weekends before it just gets overrun, picked through.
Yeah.
That's kind of what the very beginning of it's kind of what I'm really excited about, when it really first gets on there before. And hopefully it's before people really get out there. But that's the way it is. I think I'm going to be a little bit more secretive about the results until later.
Are we going to go out this weekend?
Maybe. But just I just kind of get the steelhead season as a whole, and then.
No, you're right. I mean, I think with steelhead and like with the deer rut, like I feel like there's definitely like once people are like, okay, it's on, like the spots get filled up way quicker.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of like hit that front edge before people have really realized that the fishing is good.
Yeah. What's the crazy thing about rut is that there's always someone who on October 2nd came to the calls. What? But in some of these areas that are really hammered, you get so many people out there with calls. Then by the time rut really rolls around, are they? Some will probably come to the call, but have they been called to so much that they're a little bit call shy? Like, who knows? But there's always going to be someone who goes to a high traffic area, calls, and one comes in.
Yeah.
It's just you kind of get in your own head in the same way that choosing the right fly is, just an exercise in second guessing yourself. Same thing with everything. You just draw yourself or make yourself crazy thinking about should have been here last week or yesterday, or used that fly or this fly, or should have camped rather than this, and should have gone to this river rather than this one. But I guess if it was easy and predictable, it wouldn't be nearly as fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's definitely, you're right, there is always that one obnoxious person. Even in September, we came back from alpine hunting and we ran into some hunters and they were like, yeah, blew the call, this buck came in, but we couldn't get a shot. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like there's like always like a week in October where it's like everyone's taking off work and you're like, all right, everyone's getting deer, like it's time.
Yeah. Yeah, it just starts to go. And it's just the same thing with steelhead season. Like once end of April happens, if you haven't really had a really nice day or two, you start thinking, okay, we're running out of time here. This is the hot time for steelhead fishing, and it's not going to be like this again for, a year. You can catch them in the fall, you can catch them in the winter, but as far as as close to a volume fishery as it's going to be this time of year, and you got about a 3-4 week window, and you just hope that it lines up. And you can make it happen. And same thing with rut. Everyone starts getting deer. And then you start to, this is it. This is what we've been thinking about. And we got our brand new calls and we got everything going. And so.
Yeah.
Make yourself crazy.
Definitely.
What's, we don't have anything new this year for steelhead fishing. Same rods, same reels, same,
Finally got some new waders.
Yeah. Nothing really new on that.
Nope.
That was a garden. You just got back from Phoenix to take a look there. The lettuce that you transplanted out there didn't look great. Is it starting to come back a little bit?
I'm like too lazy to have grow lights over my plants, so they all get kind of leggy, and the lettuce got pretty leggy, and so I think probably I should have just started it out there, but I think we got some new kind of growth growing in the middle that should come through, so that's That's in the greenhouse. Was hoping to get some lettuce like mid-April, but since I didn't do my starts well, probably will be early May. But yeah, we got lettuce. I planted out the peppers and tomatoes also, again, because I was too lazy to up pot them. And so I figured I'll just put them in the greenhouse, even though it's a bit early for that. I planted out half the starts actually, so it's kind of an experiment to see if they do okay with, like, right now our lows are mid to low 30s, which is pretty chilly. They are protected in the greenhouse, but I don't know. They say like peppers can be stunted if they get below like 60 degrees or something. So that's kind of what we have going now. And then, yeah, probably in the next week or so, I'll start seeding out some of the cool season carrots, beets, lettuce, kale. And probably I'll just cover it until it germinates and then uncover it, and it should be warm enough to get that stuff going. So yeah, we're like at peak gardening. Starting, I guess.
So as far as soil prep, bed prep, all that stuff, we got a whole bunch of beds, and then got some dirt in there, just some regular fill, and then seaweed.
Yeah.
And then you added for some of the stuff, you added some manure.
Yeah, so we bought like a truckload of soil from, a guy in town, and
he sifted it out, which was awesome. So it wasn't all chunky and rooty and gross.
Yeah.
It was just dirt, which was nice.
I also think like this, I don't know, like there wasn't a whole lot of organics in there. Like it was pretty heavy soil, which isn't great. So that's why I picked up some seaweed and kind of tried to layer it in. And then I also got a bunch of bags of like composted steer manure, which is like mostly organics, and kind of worked that in as well to try to help lighten it up. And then that organic also helps hold moisture in there. So in the greenhouse, that was kind of more important than outside. I mean, it rains enough that I don't know if I need to hold more moisture in the soil, but in the greenhouse, it's nice to not have to water it so much. And it just creates a lighter soil too for the plants to root in and everything. So yeah, that was a lot of weekends moving around dirt and stuff.
Then transplanted some berries from one location to another.
Mm-hmm.
And then my section, I took out a whole bunch of the salmon berries because they're just so prolific. Had to cut them back. So now the blueberries and huckleberries, it's funny to see them. It was in the race for sunlight. They got super long, but not robust. It's all like a vertical growth rather than
spindly.
Yeah. So and some of those I actually accidentally cut out when I was thinning it out last year. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. There's a lot of growth on those. They're very appreciative of having the salmon berries cut out, but those things still coming back. So every time there's like another shoot coming out, I try to get rid of them. But hopefully that back area will just be blueberries and huckleberries.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And then a couple spots left some salmon berries because they're not bad. But I just want to prioritize the blue and the huckle.
Yeah, and we got plenty of salmon berries all over our property.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm excited to do a little bit more landscaping this year. We got a rhododendron that we need to plant. We got some other perennials to kind of plant in the front.
Forgot to tell you, I saw a bee a couple days ago.
Oh, where?
It was in the back area. I tried to tell him to go out by the apple trees. But, yeah, I don't know if he went or not. But, yeah, that was nice. It was weird last year that the apple trees, it seemed like a bee went and just haphazardly.
Yeah, pollinated like 10 apples.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. But, yeah, hopefully we can get some more bee action.
Yeah, and that's a big part of why I'm trying to landscape better, to have some more flowers early on, to try to pull in some more pollinators. Because I think that was the problem with the apple trees.
We would get 6, 8, something like that.
Yeah, I think we got because there's 3 varieties out there. One of them we didn't get any off of, which maybe is flowering. I got to pay more attention this year. It might flower later than the other two, and that might be why nothing got pollinated. And then the other two, I think we got like 8 off one and 2 off the other or something.
Yeah, and then the cherry trees, this is the first year we had them, and one had probably 12.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty small one. And you said that if they fruit too early when they should be worrying about their roots, that might not be a great thing.
Yeah, those cherry trees, I mean, I think I got them for like $30 a piece. So they're small. They're, I don't know, maybe 3 feet tall. So I really would like them to grow a little bigger before we try to have fruit production. And so, yeah, we'll see how many flowers we let grow into cherries.
Oh, okay. Well, we got them last year, and you were gone for work, I think.
Yeah.
So that was, they were starting to, they'd happened, and they were starting to ripen. And so while you were gone, I enjoyed some cherries.
Yeah, and that's always the problem. I'm like, okay, I got to do this thing. And then like all spring and early summer, I'm going to be traveling again this year. So
yeah, and slugging.
Slug. Oh, yeah, killing the slugs.
Yeah, adding 10 more beds, that's going to definitely up the slug action.
Somebody did tell me, though, that if you like crush up eggshells and like dry them out, crush them up, that if you spread them thickly enough, the slugs won't cross them. Like it cuts them up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's a lot of eggs, but I think we might be able to do that.
I know.
It's a lot of eggs.
Yeah. So, yeah, we should start saving our eggshells.
So I'd heard we used the beer last year, just those cups of beer, and it attracts them, but it seems like there's just so many that there's enough slugs for both drowning in the beer and then also eating the lettuce. There was, I don't know if it was Padea or someone was talking about electrifying the bed so that way it's like, that's a positive. Yeah, I guess you could, but what the heck? What are those slug remedies? Of course, there's chemicals and stuff. We try to stay clear of that.
Yeah. Beer. I mean, I guess the other one is like there are some flowers and stuff that are in theory either